from the two of you, what kinds of structures do we need and processes do we need to build so that these effective programs begin to be sustained and achieve the scale that's required in the kind of gaps between the students who are below basic and the aspiration for everybody to be proficient and above. So what do you see that we need to do from your perspective on the community side and your perspective on the school side to strengthen the relationships so they're more productive and scalable?
Well, I think, you know, as Freeman was talking, I was sitting there thinking about how, you know, there's lots of helpful folks in Central Falls that want to make a difference, yet what Victor was saying is that, but if you're showing up with your own version of what help means, or you're showing up wanting to get a funding stream from somewhere else for your pet thing, but it doesn't fit at all with where the district knows that it needs to go. And I think one thing, you hit a little bit on attitude. We are not there in some sort of a condescending role. We're here to help. We are partners. And I think you can't get to an honest level of dialogue about talking about what you need from one another. And so I think there are lots of layers to honest exchange about, you know, what things are working out. So we're, just real quickly, Warren, we're in a community mapping, resource mapping exercise with Central Falls. It's like, all right, there are too many people walking around that high school who swear they're there to help. They actually aren't that helpful. Number two, they don't fit anywhere with their, you know, foundation logic model, NEASC, or the school transformation plan. So what are exactly what your roles are? And I think it's a lot of work, but I think that kind of clarity is what's needed. You know, the details do matter. And I see, I'm, you know, maybe out of whatever reason, I've been in and out of Central Falls as the Deputy State Commissioner and so forth for maybe 12, 13 years, but I really do see some real promise developing there. And I see it and I feel it and you can touch it. And I think it's kind of, there's you know, some degree of relentlessness, frankly, is called for.
Just to build on that, I would say that it was the willingness to spend the time talking, spend the time listening to one another, and really building that trust. I mean, we spent about 6-7 months where we'll meet weekly and just continuously build and add people to our table. And as the realization that the grant was not going to come around, a lot of people left, and you know, a few of us are still sitting there, still having the conversation. And so it's that level of trust and that level of relentlessness, really to stay at the table and work with one another.
So I'm going to go to the audience, but I just want to make one observation here. We tend to create the structures that create the dialogue with temporary funds from outside organizations that go away. And once the funds go away, the structure and therefore the dialogue and partnership weakens or disappears entirely. And so one question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we create these structures in a way that they are lasting and not dependent upon short-term 3-year investments from philanthropy, which is ordinarily how they're created, and when the money ends, that's how they end. Let me turn to the audience for a question or a comment, and if there isn't one, I'll go back to, I was hoping my dear colleague Sue Lucy would say something about partnership, the superintendent of Providence Public Schools.
I came back to Providence in July as superintendent, but I had been in the district about 8 years ago. And one thing that's changed in that intervening period was some of the most successful partners in the district have what I call embedded partners. So when you look at the Providence After School Alliance, they actually have a staff member whose office is in our building. And basically the Alliance and the school department have figured out how their two agendas intersect on behalf of kids. And by virtue of that staff member kind of crossing cultures, he was able to, in a sense, translate between both sides. So there's the understanding of the academic goals and requirements of the system and of the state that we're reporting to. But then he also brings the youth development goals and the other goals of the Alliance. Similarly, when you look at the college again, there's this translation across cultures. A third example, and then I'll be quiet, is
I haven't threatened to hug you yet.
I know, I'm hoping I can just keep talking until you hug me. No, that was a joke for a group called Inspiring Minds has worked with the system over numerous years. They now understand when they send in volunteers that there needs to be a structure that ties with the work of our literacy coaches and our classroom teachers. So there are structures so that it really is moving together in partnership as opposed to trying to coordinate multiple kind of disparate impulses.
So far we've been talking about higher education, not higher education, we've been talking about K-12 and partnerships with community-based organizations and groups like the College Crusade and Inspiring Minds. I want to give our colleagues in higher education an opportunity to sort of respond to what Dr. Hrabowski said, because he also talked about the need to change curriculum and pedagogy and culture in higher education. Could you reflect on your own experiences, and what that means, and what are some of the successful strategies that you are adopting? And I'll turn to Don, who seems to be ready to grab the mic.
Thanks, Warren. It's a very interesting question that you're asking, Freeman, and it's we have some similarity in backgrounds in the sense that we both come through the STEM areas. I'm going to
Not answer my question.
No, I am. What we have is this whole system is so compartmentalized that it is designed to fail. You think about the educational system. Let me do an analogy. The educational system is a bucket brigade. So the kindergarten teacher starts with a full bucket and hands the bucket of students to the first grade teacher, who hands it to the second grade teacher. Each one of those people is individually responsible for passing on a full bucket, but that doesn't happen. Some of those kids slop out the side, and when they slop out, they're no longer in the bucket. They're lost to the educational system. And so what the higher education people do is say, well, that's the cost of doing business. You know, we expect only a small number of people to get all the way to higher education. And we in higher education are the people that survived the last round of the bucket. So it worked for us. So let's just keep on replicating the process, and we're good with this because it worked for us and we're now in control. So I'll give you this story. At Roger Williams, we have a program where we take in a group of students who are who do not meet our admissions requirements. They are people who have all shared certain major obstacles in their life. They are, by design, the first in their family to go to college. They are people who are below the poverty level, and while they may have been earnest students, they haven't been working in particularly solid districts, and they haven't really gotten a good preparation for college. And they've all had to show how they've overcome some major obstacle in their life, like the loss of a parent or their house burned down or some traumatic event which they've somehow tried to overcome. We give each one of those students a full ride. The first group graduated this past spring. Their four-year graduation rate, now this is a group of people that ordinarily, they're mostly minority kids but not exclusively, we would expect none of them to succeed because by definition they didn't meet our entrance requirements. Their graduation rate was 83%. Now that's higher than is the percentage for the regularly admitted students. So what is going on here? Well, the answer is we believed in them and we gave them support in ways that didn't happen formally in their life. And when they knew they had one shot at the brass ring, they weren't about to let it go. So what we're demonstrating, first of all, is that everything we think we know about who is eligible to go to college and who should be allowed to go to college and who's demonstrated their eligibility is bogus. Because, and this is not in any way a unique thing. I can point to, we did a program when I was at URI 30 years ago. It was very similar. It's how you support people, and something that Freeman said early on. As long as this is a one-on-one enterprise, where you as a student must demonstrate to a particular teacher at a particular time, by yourself, no help, I'm ready, I can do it, we are going to see failure after failure. Some will succeed, but many will fail. When you begin to think in terms of how can we do this in a more communal way, where groups of people are working together to achieve success rather than to eliminate the unworthy, we're going to have a much more successful program. And until and unless higher education says our job is not to sit and wait to get the rest of the bucket, whatever's in there, our job is to make sure the bucket is full when we get it. We're going to continue to replicate the same problem.